evening. I'd like to welcome you to the spring edition of Talking with Forest Park. I'm Jason Grzgorek, Waycross Community Media's Government Access Coordinator, bringing out the round table and bringing out those fine flowers with our special guests here tonight, as always, City Manager Ray Hodges. Ray, glad you could join us.
Glad to be here once again, Jason.
It's spring has sprung, and we're very thankful for the fine guest you've brought. We won't say they're spring chickens, but we definitely have some old hands here ready to bring forward some great news that the city is bringing along with us.
Right, you hit two of the key points here. One of our finest and an old hand at a new job, and that's the introduction of our new police chief, Bill Arns.
Thank you.
Chief, glad you could join us. I love having new and familiar faces here. Not familiar to most people, maybe. And as we were going through the archives, you have made a few appearances here at Waycross.
I have. It's been a while.
It's been a while. As we said, maybe change of hair just a little bit. Styles only. But I would like to welcome you, obviously, into the position that you're in. Obviously, it's a great aspiration to meet and great shoes to fill as well.
Absolutely.
Let's go through your history. Where did policing begin for you, and how did we achieve this fine goal?
Sure. Well, to start from the beginning, my family and I moved to Forest Park when I was in third grade. So I basically grew up in Forest Park, graduated from high school here, and never left. When I decided that I thought policing was going to be a career that I wanted to pursue, the police department at the time had what they called the Explorer program, which is through the Boy Scouts of America. So I joined that at 15 years of age and stayed in that program until I was 21. And at that time, I thought, okay, I think I want to make Forest Park where I want to stay. So I applied for and became an auxiliary officer and went through the Hamilton County Sheriff's Police Academy and got my certification. At the same time, I also worked as a police clerk for the police department. And when a full-time position opened up, I took the civil service exam and scored well enough. And fortunately, Mr. Hodges saw fit to hire me as a patrolman in 1987. So I slowly progressed my way through the ranks with the police department.
I was just going to say, you've definitely touched on almost every bit of the station there. Do you feel that is a help to where you are today?
Oh, it's been tremendous to be able to work in nearly every aspect of the police department, from the clerical staff to the patrol officer role. Then I moved into a detective position. I did that for several years. Then was promoted to patrol sergeant, and then to a lieutenant, which is a command staff position, and was able to oversee 2 divisions while I was there, under the leadership of Ken Hughes, and then later Phil Cannon. And eventually, when Gary Terrell retired, I was promoted to assistant chief under Colonel Cannon.
Like I said earlier, you've got some really big shoes to fill, but at the same time, they were such great mentors for you as well.
Absolutely.
We always say people don't want to leave because we do have the finest. Ray, do you feel that this is where our station needs to be? I mean, obviously we've got greatness at the ranks, and we'll be talking about the promotions that are coming up that have happened already. But we get these very fortunate people who live and breathe Forest Park and want to give back to it. How do we get so lucky?
Well, we're very fortunate when we start with selecting what we consider to be the best to come on staff to begin with. So that's where it all begins. Then being able to observe these individuals as they progress through their career, and then getting to a point where, quite honestly, we could go and consider people throughout the country to consider this job. And there are many, many people throughout the country that will be very glad to have this job. But here we have the opportunity to have not only what we consider good quality people, but highly professional people, people that understand the community, people that understand policing. And for that reason, although we consider individuals throughout the country, in this case, we decided that it would be best for us to apply internally, and in this case, promote internally. We're very glad to promote from in-house. At the same time, we're very conscious that you don't want too much in-house inbreeding, so to speak, in terms of development and progression. And there are people that may be able to bring new and innovative type of ideals to operation. Here, we don't necessarily need an outside individual. We got the talent and we got the innovation right here. So for that reason, we're able to hire from inside. And it's a conscious decision because we definitely make that decision whether or not it's best for us to even go outside and bring in outside applicants, or do we really truly feel we've got the finest that's available to us, not just locally, but from throughout the country.
Chief, obviously we were talking that you've touched base on everything.
Yeah.
You've seen changes. Ray's making mention of the things that are happening and changes that are occurring. What do you think is the hardest struggle for you now as chief to say, this was once what happened, this is what will happen now?
Well, we've had a very fortunate groundwork set up for us by our previous administrations, and I'll go all the way back to Steve Vollmer, who introduced community policing to the police department and to the city. Ken Hughes then expounded upon that. We ran into a slight downtick, if you will, in our outreach programs when the economy hit a downturn, and we had to not replace officers as they were retiring. We're now at a position where we're able to backfill some of those positions, and in fact, 4 new officers will be starting in 2 weeks. But over the past 2 to 3 years, we've been really enhancing our community outreach, which I think is a very integral part of policing today, not only in our community, but across the nation. Police departments are being looked at with a lot more scrutiny in what they do, what their policies and procedures are, and there is a definite need for transparency. And we are good at that, but we need to be better. And that's one of the aspects that I intend on improving and building upon.
Again, being in your position is a very tough one at that, not just because of what you need to do, but as the media has shown with that idea of transparency, that a lot of people either fear or they loathe. And again, our city is very fortunate. We've been very, very lucky in many aspects. Do you feel that you will ever need to combat that and that fear and loathing? I mean, at all?
Well, I certainly am not blind to the fact that bad things can happen at any time. But I think through enhanced training and through our enhanced community involvement, that we can establish partnerships. And those who may not really know us well at all will come to know us. And I think once you develop those partnerships, not only do our officers get a better understanding of the community, but the community gets a better understanding of who the officers are. And then there's mutual trust. And that's our goal and our objective as we move forward in what I would call my administration.
And that brings me to the next tier as we're kind of building this wonderful idea. I can hear many aspects from your stories that you're speaking about from your previous mentors and how you're bringing that into your teachings to make your own administration. Again, we're kind of at the ground level for you. You're bringing 4 new individuals in, which was a great spectacle to see last Monday. How do you take the old guard now? You've got those gentlemen behind you that you've worked hand in hand with. They have to see you now in a new role. How does that change, and how do you make it your department now?
Well, we had two fine candidates who submitted their applications for assistant chief. Lieutenant Rick Jones was ultimately selected, and Lieutenant Rick Jones currently oversees our investigative division, and at one time had also oversaw our patrol division. So he has a very well-rounded base of the operations of the police department. He is also very experienced and very well educated. He's a FBI National Academy graduate. So I fully intend on tapping him in his experience and his knowledge in helping us to achieve these goals that I was talking about. We also are replacing his position with a current patrol sergeant,
Okay.
who is now going to oversee our patrol division, and that would be Sergeant Tony Pope. And again, he comes with many years of experience, not only with Forest Park, but he was with the Sheriff's Office here in Hamilton County prior to that. And then as we continue to go down the line, his position is going to be filled by Police Officer Darnell Narad, who is an experienced police officer and has served as an officer in charge. And Darnell also has the not only the capability but the desire to get involved in community initiatives, and that is exactly where we want our first line supervisors to be. So I see a very seamless transition, and I have a high optimistic hope that we're not going to skip a beat
Sure.
as we transition here.
Ray, you have seen many great men take this position. Obviously, you have one more to our trophy case. What would you like to see the city achieve through our new chief here that you've seen in the past?
Well, it's not so much seeing something different, but improving on what we have been successful at. And I think we've been very successful at good professional policing in the community. I often say that this community is like many other communities. Despite the demographics, what they want is public safety. And as long as someone can do a decent job in a professional manner and in an unbiased manner, then they can get the job done. That's what we have had, that's what has benefited us, and that's what the public wants. The public isn't anticipating or looking for special favors or special treatment or not even a buddy-buddy relationship, but they want good, objective, professional policing. And when we do that, we do a great job. And I often say I support the police 100% until there's something that is not done properly. And if it's not done properly, you need to call it out and you need to correct it, not cover it up. Again, we've been very good at working at doing the right things. And if by chance we make a mistake, working to correct that mistake. So we want to continue that. That's our reputation, and we've been very good at it. And I'm sure under the leadership of Chief Arns, we'll continue to be very good at it.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, I'm sure you fully concur with all of it.
I echo everything you just said. Transparency and accountability is going to be our hallmark under my administration. Absolutely.
And as we're running towards the end of this segment here on Talking with Forest Park, I always like to kind of do the dichotomy here. Let's talk a little bit about the past portion here and say, you've been a Forest Park lad for years.
Yes.
This is your home, this is your heart. Did you honestly believe early on in your career this was where you would be today?
No, not when I first started.
Okay.
I did not actually start having the dream of being police chief until I was promoted to lieutenant. And then I started seeing how the future could ultimately evolve for me. And that's when I really thought, this dream could possibly come true. Yes.
And here we are.
And here we are.
And then, of course, as we round out, I always like to bring out the crystal ball. If we were to be back here 1 year from today, what would we be saying is that first benchmark that you've made for your first year?
I would hope that if I come back in 1 year, we would have had an entire year where no one was injured, no one got sick, and we were at full complement for the first time in many, many years, and all of our programs were running at 100%.
Those are great goals to achieve.
Yes.
We have this on tape, so we will bring it back 1 year from now, and we'll bring that hopefully we will see that to fruition.
Yes, sir.
Ray is always bringing great, wonderful individuals here. If you have missed the pinning ceremony, it is a part of this month's first council meeting here in the city of Forest Park. That's the May 8th edition. Please catch it. It is absolutely moving. It is a wonderful thing to see, and I'm glad that we do honor our men in blue. We thank you. And women as well, of course.
Thank you very much.
Well, Ray, we will wrap this portion up here, and we will bring in, again, an old favorite, an old friend here to Talking with Forest Park. So stay tuned. You are watching the spring edition of Talking with Forest Park. We'll be right back.
Hello once again. I want to welcome you to another aspect of Insight. And we have here Bill Arns, one of our officers with the Forest Park Police Department with us. Bill, I'm glad that you were able to take a little time to stop in and talk to us today about the new Child Safety Chair program that it's actually legislation that's gone into effect. These safety seats that people have to have in their cars to transport children around has been around for some time, but I understand there's some changes in the law. Can you just briefly tell us what some of those changes are?
Yes, this past June, the state legislators enacted some modifications to the child restraint law. There's several key parts to this law that the motoring public needs to be aware of. Probably the number one change was the wording as far as what child is required to be in a child seat. And that wording now is any child who is under the age of 4 and under 40 pounds, whereas the old law read a child who was under 4 or under 40 pounds. So they have changed some of the wording there to encompass weight and age instead of weight or age.
Well, let's spend some time talking about some other aspects of the differences between the new law and the old law. Let's take, for example, the situation where it's not the parent, but maybe it's the babysitter, or maybe it's the grandparent. Someone else is transporting the child, and it's only going to be a short run. What does the new law say about it being a parent versus a non-parent?
Under our old law, the law was very confusing as to when a child's seat was needed when somebody was transporting it other than the parent. Under the current law, anyone who is transporting a child that fits under this criteria must have the child properly restrained in a child restraint seat. The only exceptions are public safety vehicles and taxi cabs. Other than those exceptions, whether it's an aunt or an uncle, brother or sister, they must have the child restrained in a child restraint seat.
What about the areas of fines? Did the area of what fine can be imposed on this change at all?
Yes, the fines have increased substantially. A first offense can carry a minor misdemeanor fine, which is a fine of up to $100, and any subsequent violations of the law is a misdemeanor of the 4th degree, and a fine for that would be $250 and or 30 days in jail. So the legislators have really toughened up the fine section of this law.
Well, it sounds like they really have gotten serious with enforcing this. But in the past, I believe that you could, if you didn't have the seat with you at the time, maybe you left it at home or something like that, or you just had not bought one at that time, but now you've gone out and bought one. You can go to the judge and you can show them your receipt, or you can show them the seat that you had and just didn't have it available at the time that you were stopped. What happens now if that situation occurs?
Again, under the old law, if a person showed to the court that they had purchased a child restraint seat, or that they did have one, just didn't have it in use at the time, the offense was dropped and the charge was dismissed. Under this new law, they have eliminated that section of law, and there is no provision for proving to the court that you are now in compliance, the fine would still be enacted.
Now, there's obviously a lot of changes in this new law, and perhaps all residents of Ohio should be aware of it. But what about the person coming from out of state, someone that's not familiar with Ohio laws? What happens if they are stopped under this potential violation?
Under the provisions of the new law, they do have some wording for out-of-state violators. And basically, a person from out of state who is stopped for a violation of our law would simply need to prove to the court that they are in compliance with their home state law, and Ohio will recognize that home state law.
There will apparently be some funds generated from this. People may have to go through a learning curve to realize that it's really going to be enforced. But the funds that are generated from the violators, where will those dollars go to? Are they specifically to be used for some particular purpose?
Yes, 65% of the fine generated through these violations is going to go into a program called the Highway Safety Child Fund, and that's going to be used to educate the public, educate the police in the area of child restraint laws, and the remaining monies will be dispersed as the provisions of the previous law indicated.
Since the time that this law has gone into effect, have you found a lot of serious problems in this general area? How are you handling this? Is this somewhat of a, do you have the opportunity to educate the public, or is this enforcement where you have no options available to you?
This past July, Forest Park, along with the state of Ohio, participated in what we called Operation Buckle Down. It involved 1 week of of education, where we had some editorials in the newspaper. We had a giveaway at the Leaps and Bounds store on Smiley Avenue, passing out literature indicating the new child restraint law. The following week was what they called the Enforcement Week, where we had a zero tolerance policy, and we did in fact stop several motorists who were in violation of the new law, and they were cited to the county court only because our local ordinance had not been revised at the time.
And is it correct that this fund that will be related to the fines generated from the violations, can it be used to purchase car seats for low-income individuals or individuals that do not have the financial means to obtain the appropriate seats?
Yeah, I believe the part of the State Highway Child Fund is going to be used to implement a program for low-income mothers and fathers so that they can obtain child restraint seats either at a low price or even free. And I know there's several groups in existence that have a very strong interest in promoting child safety. I know for one, the Kauaians here locally donated several car seats to the police department for our use, along with Children's Hospital. And we use those seats if we stop a violator, find that they do not have a child seat available. We will loan them one to get them to their destination, and then when they come to court to pay their fine, they would return the child seat to us.
And explain just once again for our viewers the age and size of the children that this would affect.
Again, it affects any child who is 4 years of age or under, and who is under 40 pounds.
Okay. If people wanted more information about this, is there a number that they can call or a person that they can get in contact to find out more information about it?
Absolutely. They can either call me at the Forest Park Police Department at 595-5220. There is also a number established by the Board of Health under this new law, and that number is 1-800-575-SEAT, and that is a hotline established for any questions anybody may have about the new law.
Well, Bill, you've been quite informative today. I appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk with us.
Thank you.
Wish you the best out there on the road and try to keep the public safe.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges.
And welcome back. I'd like to bring us all back together on this spring edition of Talking with Forest Park with friend of show, as always, right, Gwen from Forest Park Environmental.
It's always a thrill.
As always, you bring the bloom into spring blooms here on the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
I know, you're saying you're digging your hole deeper. See, I can do gardening puns all night.
I'm sure you can.
Ray, as always, we bring right on because he keeps our city very clean and beautiful, as always. Of course, that is a tough job with a good correspondence between our public as well as with Wright. We've got a number of programs that have been going on and are meeting milestones as well as meeting goals. Before we get into Wright's conversations, your thoughts for 2018 in the environmental segment here.
Right. Well, as you may well know, the environmental area is one that I'm very, very close to, and we probably have covered this topic more than any other topic, but it's one that I think is so critically important for this community. So for that reason, I really want to jump into it because we got so many things that are on schedule for the environmental awareness that I think the public, one, should know, and I think they'll be very interested in knowing all the things that were going on and that don't necessarily get the headlines as some of our other activities. So for that reason, we brought Wright Gwen on, and I'm sure Wright will help us go through, and we can't cover everything, but we can cover some of the upcoming programs that we know the public will be interested in.
Absolutely right. We're going to dive in because we've got a nice little outline to go through, and our first year with our pilot program that we're going to kind of be bringing back up is the tree removal program.
Right.
How has that been? I mean, are we moving forward from pilot to continuation? Was it that much of a success?
I consider it a very successful program. We got a contractor who we felt very comfortable with. He was willing to work with us on our initial structuring of the program, and the way that it worked was we let residents register for a month. That was in January, and we had 104 households registered for the program. Then the contractor went out to estimate the trees, and there were some qualifications. The tree had to be dead or dying. That's basically it. You know, but we weren't going to prune. We weren't going to do cosmetic work.
Well,
we wanted to get these trees out that could
correct.
pose potential hazards to the houses and to the neighbors and things like that. And so out of those, about a third did not qualify when the contractor went out because they weren't dead or dying.
Okay.
It was they just wanted them removed or maybe pruned up a bit, which I understand.
Hey, it's something we don't like to do, but I mean, finding out whether your tree is dead or dying is important.
Right. It is important. It is important. And maybe down the road, to answer your question, yes, we're going to do this for years to come. So maybe down the road they can use our services then. So about 65 houses qualified and 44 households signed a contract.
Okay.
We're about 2/3 of the way through removing trees. We've done 30 households so far, and we've removed 52 trees.
Wow.
With most of them being ash and maple.
Which you probably
Knew about the ash. The maple kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought there'd be the vast majority would be ash, but no, the maples were kind of in there. So
was that more due to age, do you think, then?
There's no telling.
Okay.
There's no telling. We've had a couple really massive droughts the last couple years, and if you don't water them, it'll catch up to the trees. And so anyway, so they're being removed, and I talked with the contractor today. We finally got some dry weather, a period of dry weather. It really slowed us down this spring because it was so wet.
Fair.
We couldn't get the trucks in. If we did, it would just tear up the people's yards. So finally drying up, and I sent him an email. He says, yes, we'd like to get them done within the next 2 weeks if it stays dry.
Wonderful.
And then we'll come back. We'll talk about the program, the pros and cons, and we'll tweak it a little bit more, and then we might have another registration period, or we might just kind of open it up to where maybe it's just year-round. But I talked to a couple contractors, and they like the idea of having work done in the winter
I was just
because
gonna
it's
say.
a slow time. So if we could bunch them all up somehow like we did this year and
Keeping
go-
it as a seasonal
Right.
program
right.
as opposed to
Because they get so
year-round.
busy in the fall and the summer and the spring that the winter is kind of a downtime for them, and this would be a good kind of maybe program for them.
Well, and as you've already answered the question, and this is going to be a continuation. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
the pilot worked. Ray, do you feel that obviously, if we're okaying for other years, that this was something that was absolutely necessary? Obviously, we want to keep things clean, and that also includes the beautification with the trees around the area.
Right, it's definitely something that I think was necessary. You don't know how many people are going to necessarily participate initially.
Fair.
But over a period of time, I may have 3, 4, 5 people that are contacting me asking if there's any assistance the city can provide in removing trees. Well, we can't provide any special service for 3, 4, 5 people, but it is an indication that there are people out there that need this assistance and they don't know how to get it or they can't afford it. So this program was very helpful to say, okay, we can address it. It's a private property issue, but we can address it as a public matter through this program. And then we come to find out, no, it's far more than 3, 4, 5 people. It may not be thousands, but nevertheless, far more than 3, 4, 5 people. And it is a valuable service that people are taking advantage of, working with the city. And they're doing 2 things that I think is very, very important. 1, they're saving a lot of money in doing this. And then 2, they're having the relief of knowing who they're working with and that there's a sense of assurance of the quality of work that they're going to get. People have commented that that's very, very important to them. So we're glad to provide the service, and it's obviously very important.
A great form of reassurance.
Right, and Ray touched on a very important point. It's expensive to cut down a tree, and Ray and I have been in conversations about this for years, at least a couple of years, trying to figure out what we can do about it. And so in order to help the residents with the removal of the tree and the cost, there is a subsidy that the environmental program provides. It's a 50% subsidy up to a maximum subsidy of $500. So
you're already saying a price tag of $500. That's already keying into me that that's very expensive to remove a tree.
it is, and some trees are a lot more expensive than others. And Ray was really good at pointing that out. He says, you know, right, there are some trees that are really going to be expensive to remove. And so, again, we'll revisit the subsidy to see if we feel like that's a good price for the subsidy. Should we improve it a little bit? We're not really sure, but we do want to have a subsidy. We want to continue that. And we do want to make sure that the person who removes the tree is well qualified, has the insurance, has certifications, because we don't want someone to drop a tree on somebody's fence or car or house or...
Well, and having someone like that is so much better than having so-and-so's brother come in who knows how to run a chainsaw.
Right.
I mean, there's more to it than this. These are
Right.
people who are trained, who know how proper disposal. It's not just cutting the tree, but also the disposal.
Exactly.
And hopefully, if it's not very well diseased or anything, can be used for something else unless it is completely dead.
Right.
Then you cannot really, or should not really use
Right.
it.
So all in all, I'm very happy with it.
Good.
And hopefully we'll get together. I've got a meeting with him Friday,
Okay.
and so we'll probably sit down and talk about it.
And then that's one birthday of a one-year program.
Right.
We're celebrating 5 years of reforesting Forest Park already, which
Right.
seems unfathomable. I mean, you know,
Right.
here we were just talking about these great ideas, and now it's in its 5th year. Obviously, a program that is still continuing to this day. Are people still clamoring to get their trees? Or are you selling out? That's the important part.
So far, we've sold out every year. We do 100 trees a year. We do 4 different kinds of trees, and we try to shake them up every so often, so we get a good diversity of trees in the area. And so we have 2 large types of canopy trees, the 80-foot trees. And then we have understory trees that are like 25, 30 feet in height. And two kinds of those. And yes, we're doing very well this year. So far, we've got 20 out of the 100 that have been reserved. And the big tree, the big hit this year is the pink flowering dogwood.
Would you have anticipated that?
Well, it's a California. No, it's a North Carolina tree. It's the
Okay.
state tree of North Carolina, and then, you know, I'm from North
I was
Carolina.
just gonna say, is
so
there
it's
a
a
tie
quality. It's
here?
a quality tree. It is a beautiful tree, and it is gorgeous. It's got nice blooms in the spring, and they're nice and pink and bright. And in the fall, the leaves just turn scarlet red. I mean, just blazing red. And I've got 3 in my backyard
And
that I transplanted
better
from
than the
home.
maple. Interesting.
Oh, it is gorgeous. So we did 35. So like out of the 100, I chose 35 for those for
Okay.
the dogwood.
And you're saying 20 of them are already?
No, about 14 or 15 of those have already.
wow.
And then we have red buds, and then we have the black gum for the big tree, and the American yellowwood for the big trees. It doesn't seem like the big trees are going this year. It's the smaller ones that are going this year. So we might have a lot of trees in our parks if they don't go well. But they'll be in Forest Park, and they'll be part of the canopy.
So
in
as you're
years to
saying,
come.
if the 100 don't go, you will be placing them within in city limits.
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah. Oh, yeah. They're
Yeah.
for Forest Park.
Right, and that's an important aspect because we have a number of trees that are 50 years old, 100 years old, that maybe they're dying out and they have to be removed. We talked about it on private property, but it's
Sure.
also on public property. But one of the concepts that we're working with is not just removing trees, but replanting trees, and hopefully replanting more than we're replacing. We work under the general slogan, keeping the forest in Forest Park, and that's what we're doing. So this program works regardless of how many people take advantage of it. 100 people have the opportunity, but if it's not on private property, these trees will be planted. We're going to add 100 trees to Forest Park this year and next year and the year after.
Right. We've already done 430 some.
Okay.
From over the last,
last
4 years or so.
Sure.
And so if we do another 4, 5, 6 years, there's another 400, 506 trees. Yeah, it's just, I keep thinking, it's a long-term project.
Right.
And I think if we come back in 10 years, 15 years, it should be interesting to see how many of these trees have survived and grown and really are making a place for themselves.
Because your
in Forest
system's
Park.
going to change that, especially as you've kind of shaken the Yahtzee balls up a little bit and let the dice roll. Here are the bigger canopy trees over here, and here's what the boulevard is going to look like, and the change is that way.
Yeah, the canopy should be in pretty good shape if we keep doing what we're doing, I think.
Right. And one of the key things is a point that Wright kind of touched on earlier. We're adding greater variety of trees within the community. One of the problems that we still experience is the fact that so many trees were planted around the same time. So many trees are dying out around the same time. So many trees are being hit with certain diseases at the same time. And you don't have enough variety to keep the forest going. This
Right.
program certainly helps, and a lot of people don't realize that, yes, within the last few years, we have planted hundreds of trees.
Which is absolutely wonderful. Now, obviously, we're still in springtime. People are still have the opportunity to get a hold of these.
Right. Oh, yes.
Get involved.
Just call me.
Call the office, of course. Now, when will you start talking about next year's variety? Or are you already looking?
I think the dogwoods are speaking for themselves. I think
Okay.
we'll do some more dogwoods, and that's as far as I'm going to go. I want to find some canopy trees that people really are excited about. So we'll be looking into those, and we might go back to a serviceberry, which is a white bloom,
Okay.
and keep the pink dogwood. So we'll have white and pink, something like that. Yeah.
Something to think about.
Oh, there's always something to think about, right?
And then our final big anniversary is the large appliance cleanup and collection.
Right.
I can believe that it's been 10 years since this.
It's
this
tough.
Has been. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's pretty amazing. From humble beginnings, this starts with just trying to get rid of some of the bigger things because it's hard for people to do because they end up leaving it on on the curb and hoping that either someone picks it up or somebody
Right.
disposes of it.
What was-
You're taking care of it in the proper means.
Well, it was interesting. When I first was hired in 1990, Forest Park, and you'll remember this, Ray. Forest, I can tell.
He's got the, yeah.
He, in the spring, y'all had like a house clean out day or something. And I remember the first 2 or 3 years, I was just overwhelmed. I don't understand how that stuff was in a house because you couldn't even see the house. It would be a big pile right in front. And I was going, and Ray and Public Works would have to go around with a front end loader and a dumpster on another truck and go from neighborhood to neighborhood just throwing it in. And it would take months sometimes to do that. And I just never understood that. And over time, we have gotten to where we have a contract now with Rumpke where you can put out one large item a week. So if you spread them out over time, that could be 52 large items in a year, which could be quite a lot.
If someone has that many items, I'd like to know that house because now I'm questioning how did they get that in their
Right,
house?
right. And our large appliance program kind of fills in a place for those appliances that have Freon,
Yes.
which the federal government will not allow waste haulers to take and put in the landfill because of the Freon.
Right.
And so, and it could take a resident $100 to $150 to have a professional come drain it, and then have to put a sticker on it, and then the residents would have to get a sticker, a Rumpke sticker to put on it and sign it saying that this is what we've done, and it's a hassle and it's expensive, very expensive.
Well, on the homeowner especially.
Oh,
It-
definitely,
it-
definitely.
You can see why people, and I hate saying this, that people would just go, I'd rather just put it somewhere and leave it alone and be done with it. And
Right.
that's where we get into the troubles we are in.
Right. And so this program kind of supplements all the other programs that are going around. And it's got its own little niche. And so instead of but then we enlarged it a little bit. Instead of just those things with Freon, we did the stoves and the water heaters and the things like that because we wanted to recycle to try to keep them out. So all in all, it's been a great program. Last year we collected 95 appliances, of which 45 had Freon. And
Still
so
keeping
that's
the landfill clean.
and it captures the Freon, and Freon is a greenhouse gas. And if you believe in global warming, that's part of the problem.
And you're being able to curb these issues. That's great. Now, again, for those who need to do it, they do need to contact you
Right.
to let people know.
Right.
595 land. Get a hold of Wright. That will definitely get that ball rolling
And it's good through August.
through August.
Right.
Okay. Making sure that everyone knows exactly when. And that, again, as we were saying, is not just limited to refrigerators and anything with Freon. It can be any large appliance, washers, dryers,
Stoves, dishwasher, clothes washer, clothes dryer, that stuff. Basically around the kitchen or utility room.
trash compactor. Yeah.
We did have one.
See, I
We
was going to
did
say,
have
my
one.
parents
Yes.
still have it. That's why I had
It's
to
hard
bring
for
it
me
up.
to say no.
Of course, those are the bigger items. And of course, making Forest Park beautiful and the way we've been doing it is obviously through our recycling programs that have been going on. We're into a third contract for solid waste and recycling,
Right.
correct? It's been over 10 years on that as well. How has this been going on and that we've been so, again, right, making these so successful?
Oh, well, it's the whole city that makes these successful. It's not me. The large appliance that we just talked about, I can schedule them, but I can't go out there and pick them up. Public Works works with me very closely. They go out when we have enough schedule, and they go out and pick them up, store them, and then we have a contractor come in and pick them up. So without Public Works, I wouldn't have that program. Same thing with the trees, the reforesting with the trees. Public Works helps me deliver them. Can you imagine me trying to deliver 100 trees? It would take me a whole week.
You could take the truck.
Oh, I could take the truck, but it still would take me a week, and we are able, with Public Works help, to get it all out in the morning. And so it's a team effort. And there are other organizations in Forest Park that add their resources and time to make these things go. The contract, again, it's a team effort because when we did this 10 years ago, it was brand new. We were all learning. And so
Not
I
where
would.
we are today.
Right. Well, we
And you
we-
had some
we-
pitfalls and some stumbling. We all
right,
get
right.
there.
But we all kind of evolved with it together, and so now it's working fairly smoothly. I think the residents understand. Everybody needs to call me if they have a concern, and then I will decide where we need to go to improve the situation. But the contract, I think, has run really well. It's reduced the cost for monthly service for people. There used to be, we were talking about large items. Before the contract, it was $10 an item. People don't remember that. I remember that because people were calling me about it.
Sure.
But yeah, $10. Now they can put out one for free every week.
Every week, yes.
And so with the reduced rate and that kind of thing, and then we reduced the cost of the trash containers and all this kind of stuff, the residents, believe it or not, over 10 years have saved over $1,500,000.
So there's
with the
they're
contract.
saving for them.
As a community.
community.
As a community. That's how much the community has saved with the contract.
And has this helped raise awareness in community for recycling as well? Because they needed specific bins, specific
Right.
for getting to know the difference between trash and recycle.
Right. Well, before the contract, and Ray would remember this too, we had 3 haulers riding around. And everyone had a different kind of program, and it was confusing. And the costs were different, and it was just hard to, to inform the public of what was going on. With the contract, we have one contractor, we have one set of rules, and it's very easy to get the information out to the public. So when we started with the contract, we had about a 50% participation rate as far as recycling goes. Now we have over 70. And with this new contract coming in, we put in the bid, we have about, out of the 5,400 households, single or duplex households in Forest Park, about 4,000 of them are recycling either with the red bin or with the green recycling tote. So with this new contract going, we put in that I'm doing a survey now. Those houses that I do not see any recycling containers at all in the times I ride around early in the morning, then we're going to deliver them one with the new contract. So everybody will have a recycling container.
And your hopes?
My hopes are that they will say, oh, this is great. I've been waiting for something like this. Why haven't I been delivered one before? But I know that there will be a lot of people who says, I didn't order this. Does this cost? So what we're going to do is have a flyer sent out to everybody first, explaining what's going to go on. If you have a question, call me. And if you do not want one, definitely call me, because we don't want to deliver you one if you don't want one.
And obviously could be used for someone else.
Right. And so that's in the contract too.
Excellent. Ray, you have said that this is a program that is near and dear to your heart with Wright and the entire environmental aspect of things. With us looking at reducing, reusing, and recycling everything, is there more that the city can do? I mean, what can we continue using our R's for?
Well, there's certainly more that we could do. What we're concentrating on right now is doing the best with the programs that we have. And as we continue to get these programs running and the public is as receptive as they are, then we'll probably introduce some additional programs. People don't realize we get all this done under the leadership of one individual. That's Ray Gwynn. And he helps us coordinate and pull the team together to get it done. But we only have one person, so we're not overstaffed in this area. Nevertheless, there's more that can be done, and I look forward to the community continuing in this direction.
We'd like to see many things, and as we're getting close to the end of our time here, we've got other programs and projects that we've not even touched on, and I'm sure there are more programs and things that you are foreseeing in the future. Right? What do you think 2018 has been so far? I mean, we're only going into the second quarter here. I mean, we're almost halfway through the year. What are you really comfortable with where you are, or should we be at another benchmark at this point?
Oh, I'm very comfortable. Over the last several years, we've been able to introduce 1 or 2 new programs a year. Okay, and that's good. We don't want to introduce a lot because then, like Ray says, we've got so many things on the fire, it won't be a quality program. It'll be a program,
Right.
but it won't be a quality program. So I feel very comfortable with 1 or 2 a year. This year we had the tree removal, and we're also we have the contract that we have to make sure that that's okay. So if we can make sure that those run smoothly, I'll be thinking about next year and on what maybe we can add to the program. I'll start thinking around the end of the summer, playing around to see how these things are going. We might modify a couple programs depending on what we find out, or we might have some new ones. But I've got a couple ideas of what I'd like to do, but I need to talk to Ray.
Everything goes through a vetting process, and I'm sure, right, that you've got something up your green jeans that'll be correct and right and ready to go.
Well, it'll be there now. Whether it's correct or right or ready to go, that's another question. But the interesting thing is, it's not all me with ideas. A good example of that would be the finance. What was Andy? What was his title?
The assistant finance
The assistant finance director. I was talking with him, and he says, right, and he lives up in Springfield, around Dayton, Centerville, somewhere. And he says, there's a community real close to us who they have a personal shredder, a shredder for residents that they have in the lobby. They have rules of how to follow, use it and everything, but it's for anybody who wants to use a shredder.
And
I said, really? I said, that sounds pretty neat. And so he sent me all the information, and I contacted that community. And so then Ray and I kind of started looking. We wanted to make sure that we got the best shredder possible and the most secure shredder possible. And so we did that, and we put up the signs and everything, and it's worked like a charm.
Right.
But it was finance, it was administration, and then it was the environmental. I mean, everybody
to
make one program. So that's what the key is. It's not one person; it's the whole organization.
And I think, Ray, to your testament, that yes, it takes a team to make a cohesive city, and here we are today with all of the programs that we have, and they're wonderful. It's great, and we love to be able to share these things to the residents who may not be aware that these are things that are going on right in their own city.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, with that, I do know that we are running out of time.
No.
So, I know. And, right? We could go on forever as always. And Ray, thank you once again for bringing wonderful people back onto the program so that, again, we can inform and educate our citizens every quarter.
Glad to do it, and we look forward to continuing the opportunity to share with the public what we're doing and make sure they're aware of some of the things, again, that don't necessarily get all the headlines, but may be of high value to them.
Absolutely.
And in closing, I was naming other organizations, and I failed to mention the Waycross Community Media.
Who are they?
They have been from day one since 1990. We have found ways to work together on different projects. The one that immediately comes to mind is the Environmental Bowl.
Yep.
That went on for years and years, and it was very elaborate, very time-consuming to get, and then editing and everything.
But it was important.
It was
for
important.
the kids as well as their parents.
But you have been with me throughout the 29 years that I've been here in the different capacities. So I want to thank you and all the people at Waycross, because y'all have been invaluable.
Can't say it any better. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray, as always. And I want to thank you as well, because it is important that you are a part of this conversation as well. I'd like to thank you for joining us on the spring edition of Talking with Forest Park. We'll see you next time. Have a great evening.